You're listening to the Intentional Teacher podcast. I am your host, Lauren Monique, and I am so excited today because we have a special guest on the podcast. Rachel Wood is here to talk to us and to help us as teachers with everything to do with our nutrition and lunches and how we can make time for really feeding ourselves well, energizing ourselves as teachers when we really have so many demands on our time. So I'm super excited to talk to you today. Welcome to the podcast, Rachel.
Thank you. Super happy to be here. Yeah, as a dietitian, there's definitely teachers that I work with, and it does present its own little set of challenges. So I'm excited to chat today.
Yeah, absolutely. It is I mean, I'm sure there are other careers like this, but I know it like when you are at school, it's like you are on the whole day and you can carve out little moments for yourself, but oftentimes, and I know if you're listening, this may be you, um we're working the entire day and we're eating while our kids are there and helping them out with whatever, or we're in a meeting or whatnot. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how about we get started? Let us know a little bit about who you are and who you help.
Yeah. So like I said, I've been a dietitian for almost 10 years, and obviously school and all of that before that. So I have a lot of experience under my belt. But right now, what I'm doing is helping women who are at least 30 years old who want to actually find their happy weight, lose the weight, but they're so sick of this diet culture, the yo-yo dieting stuff. And so I'm helping them actually tune into their metabolism and their hormones so that they can actually lose it for good and do it the healthy way so they don't feel like garbage in the process.
Mhm.
And what's really fun is that, it becomes this flexible, sustainable, kind of fun new way to see food and use it to get to your goals versus this thing we have to punish ourselves with and restrict and feel weird about. It just leads to all sorts of things that way. But, of course, when you're changing routines and habits and thoughts, there's inherently some skills that have to, sometimes grow, whether that's around meal planning or even just eating habits. And so sometimes we have to shift some things. And so there's definitely some skills that play into just about anybody's life here that I'm excited to share. And really kind of customizable to no matter how much time somebody has, really. So it's kind of you can dial it up, you can pull it way back if it's a hard thing for you to do time wise. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I love that because one of the principles that I share with the teachers I work with and to you all who are listening is the idea of living in your season and really being aware of your season, but not completely abandoning your goals, but being aware of where your season is and what you need to, like, what you can do within that. Yeah. And that is something that I share with my clients, with you listening. And I think when I first heard this concept, it was really a light bulb for me. And it's the idea of living in your season. I don't know about you if you're listening, if this is how you are, but for me, I'm the kind of person that really just wants to go and go and go and always do more and have really, really high expectations for myself. And sometimes that worked and sometimes that doesn't. That doesn't because maybe now I have little kids at home, or there was a challenge, or I was in a new classroom or something, and I wasn't living in my season. I wasn't aware of or really noticing or acknowledging the circumstances that I was in and living with them and within them rather than just trying to fight them. So I love this idea of living in your season with your food. And what you were saying is that if you have more time, you can do more. But if you have less time, you can still acknowledge, but you don't have to give it up altogether. You can maybe do a smaller amount, but you can still move forward.
Yes, 100%. And this is something I love talking about with my clients because so many women and men get stuck in this all or nothing kind of perfectionism rigidity
Mm-hmm.
around food for sure, or fitness or whatever they want. Like they set the bar a certain height. And if they don't do it or they can't do it for whatever reason, in any given week or day, then they feel like a failure. And that is absolutely, and that leads to quitting. And if you have that sort of a feeling and thought pattern, that's of course, you aren't going to get anywhere if you quit, right? And so we have to
Mm-hmm.
find ways to be flexible and adjust and feel really just free around the whole thing, because of course that's how life is. And so I don't know, for whatever reason, we like to set ourselves up in this really rigid way. But we know that life just doesn't, we just get lots of curveballs every single week. So
Yeah, totally. And
definitely, yeah.
like I think sometimes even when we're thinking about planning, that happens with us. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I've set out my plan, and then suddenly there's a fire drill that nobody told me about, and there's an assembly, and half the schools, like half my class is away for such and such a field trip with the other grade sixes or whatever, and then everything is thrown. And I think when we can be like, oh no, this is part of it, and I can modify and change instead of beating myself up and watching my thoughts. Because
Yeah.
if we're thinking our thoughts like, oh, I'm a failure, or this didn't work, or it'll never work, you won't be able to move forward. But when you have this outlook that you're talking about, I can deal with the changes. I'm like, it's not a showing, like, it's not about me being a failure. I'm just being flexible. Like, if you're changing the way you're thinking, it's going to make a huge difference if you can keep going or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
So many women kind of feel like they're failing, but it's really they literally can't see all the success that they have happening around them
Mm.
because they are so tied up in how the plan was supposed to look. So
Yes.
it's funny, we get that
Yes.
spinach in our teeth situation. We just need somebody to call it out sometimes and help us see that. Yeah.
There's such parallels in what we do. Totally. So,
Hmm.
well, I would love to hear from you, Rachel. What kind of led you to working with, it sounds like mostly women, but what kind of led you to working with women around like weight loss as a dietitian? I would love to hear a little bit more about how that came to be.
Yeah. So I originally went to nutrition school to learn because I was really frustrated in my own journey trying to figure out the sort of intersection between food and movement and how not to be starving all the time, how to feel good in my own body and kind of get the physique that I wanted. That was really one of the prime drivers for me to go to school for nutrition. And I was actually kind of along with that, I started noticing that whenever anybody was doing something that they were feeling healthier about, oh my gosh, I got so excited for them. I was kind of lit up by that whole transformation they were going through. And I was like, wow, I really want to be a part of that. And so it's really not solely about weight loss for me personally. I love walking people through just getting healthier because there's always these deeper goals. Like I want to live longer so that I can, when I'm retired, I can go travel the world or I can be like mobile and play with my grandkids and get up off the floor. And like it's really those kinds of things that matter to people,
Mhm.
less about the scale. It's like, yes, we want to feel good in our body, but why? So that we can do those things. And then what that really does is like big picture, women can just go live the lives that they really that fulfill them. And like we all know that when people feel good and they're living their purpose, everything is better. Like it's kind of this like it keeps, the circles that expand out. It really just starts impacting the whole village. So that's really why I got into nutrition school. And along the way, I personally have had a lot of experimenting and diet changes and things. And I spent my 20s and 30s trying to figure out how to be lean and was like working out 60 minutes a day and starving. And I went to school and there was still huge gaps in what I was taught versus what like boots on the ground, what actually needs to happen for you to get to where you want to go. And so it took a lot longer for me to put this all together, which is, what I'm doing with my clients now and kind of tying in the hormones and metabolism and gut health and all of that kind of stuff. And I say gut health because I also had a lot of digestive issues along the way. And so that took me on this detour of the integrative and functional medicine kind of side of things. And, lo and behold, there's a big connection between the gut and the rest of the body and how we think and our moods and how we show up in life and the feeling of wellness that we have. And of course, metabolism and hormones and therefore weight too. So it all ties together. It's this kind of beautiful ecosystem. So
Yeah.
that's probably the best way to nutshell it for you.
I love that. And when you were talking about like mobility, like older, and I don't know if you're listening, if you had any kind of imagery that came up, but the thing that made me think of was I have two little boys who are 3 and 6, and my dad for a long time had like a really, really sore shoulder and a bad knee. and he couldn't really move very well. And sometimes my kids would want to play with him and he couldn't get down on the ground. He couldn't, or it would really be difficult. And he started to heal. And it was this amazing thing. Like he went to Europe for 2 months. And I'm sure he had other healing that he did as well, like with specialists and stuff. But he came back between the specialists and the physio that he was seeing and going and walking and walking and walking. All of a sudden, like things hugely shifted for him. And seeing him be able to like get down on the ground, like he was building a fort with my kids recently and like build, like playing chess on the ground. It was like so amazing for me that he's able to do that now. And so I think that's just like such a powerful thing that you help people do. Like, is that like keeping mobility like that is really, really powerful
It's
when you think about it.
huge. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
quality of life. And so for me, like a personal driver is like most people operate on kind of the short term, like what's the payoff here in the next couple of months. For some reason, I've been really good at like seeing the long game and like
Mhm.
I don't want to be hooked up to all sorts of stuff when I'm 90. I want to be still living my life and I don't want just years, I want quality years. And so it really keeps me, in the game today, in my
Mhm.
early 40s with two young kids as well, 5 and 2. And you kind of it's kind of a self-correcting thing when you have these other things pulling you to keep yourself at the top of your priority list. Because if I don't have a good day, my kids feel it, my husband knows it, like I'm not getting the things done that help our family run as well. We all know this, right? So
Mhm.
every day there's that little reminder in front of me to keep on keeping on. So yeah.
Yeah, and that is so true. I think like when you think of the ripple effect of when you're taking care of you, in the classroom too, because I know with my kids at home, it absolutely affects my family, my husband, my kids for sure. But in the classroom, you also see it in all your students because you are the one who sets the tone for your class. So if you're always, always giving to your kids and you don't have the time in your day to give back to you, you're going to feel it in like your classroom management and the amount of creativity that you can put into when you're thinking about how to differentiate your lessons, how to meet different kids' needs, because you don't have the space to give back to them and you're the one setting the tone. Like it's going to have so many more problems and like the ripple effect is huge. And going like the other way around, when you do take a little bit of time, and I know this is so difficult, especially when we're in the classroom and it's like we have so many demands in our time, but when you can remember that principle, it can really make your life so much better and you can make a more positive impact on your students' lives because you're the one who sets the tone, like the ripple effect in the classroom.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, for
Yeah.
sure.
I'd love to get started on like a few like practical things because I always love it if you're listening to have some practical things that you can take away from the episode. What can we do when I know a lot of the a lot of the teachers listening are either moms like we are, or they are maybe newer teachers, or they have a lot of demands on their time. What can we do to make sure that we're still eating well at school when we don't have a ton of time to prep lots of food?
Yeah. Oh, huge, huge, huge. So, first of all, I think it can be helpful to sort of step back for a second and ask yourself, what does eating well mean to you?
Mm,
Right? Because that can look different for different people. There are some basic things we all need. Like we have to make sure, and really this is something I hear a lot too, is teachers will just not drink water all day because they're the bathroom situation. So what does eating well and
yeah.
drinking well, what does that look like for you right now? What could you do this week or next week? And let's define that. Does that mean that are you making your meals at home and bringing food? Does that mean that you are having snacks in your desk or ready for you to grab like on a commute? Does that mean that your kids have snacks kind of prepared? What does that mean for you? And then also tapping into what feeling that gives you, because
Mm,
that is something that is going to help you stick with it when you don't want to do it. Because your inner toddler is going to come out, and she or he is going to say like, look, I just want to go back to my old habits and like whatever, I'll just grab some takeout or something. And that is actually totally fine to do as well. But I want you to think about, what does eating well mean when you go do that? When you go through the drive-through or you go stop even at a gas station and pick up food, what is that going to look like? What does
mhm,
eating well look like in that scenario? How can you do, what does good look like? What does better look like? And what does best look like in those scenarios? And I know you guys know this, it's planning. It's like, it's the more you can kind of assess where you are now, the better you can make a solid plan going forward so that you can fix the things that don't make you feel good, that make you feel more stressed. Um, what is it going to take for you to eat well at school? Does that mean that you need to eat before you get there so you can walk past the break room full of treats and not let that derail you? Does that mean that, you have a little bit of breakfast on the way? Maybe it's a smoothie. Like, what does that mean to you, eating well? And then
I
also
mhm.
figuring out where you have the time, because that may look different for every single one of you listening. And if you have more time on the weekends, what can we do to make it a little easier during the week? Is that, are you double batching or triple batching a pot of chili or something that you can take with you? Is that making a frittata for breakfast so you can just grab and go if you're sick of smoothies or it's too cold for smoothies or whatever that might look like, you know? Um, I could keep going. I have so many thoughts here. But that's kind of like thinking ahead, looking at your calendar, which is what you're going to be doing with the planning anyway. Let's take a second to just think about it from the food standpoint too.
I have so many thoughts. I love everything that you said. And this, like, if we're thinking about it in practical terms for you when you're teaching, a lot of teachers I know, and even sometimes when teachers work with me, they'll say, like, some people don't want to work weekends. Some people prefer to work a little bit on Sunday so they can have freer evenings. Like, there's no right or wrong. But when you go, and I highly encourage you to do this if you don't do it already, is to sit down and plan out your week and look at not just planning for your students, but planning for you. Like, when are you going to get your work done? What are your hours going to look like? I love the idea of, and this is something I don't talk about, is adding in what your energy sources, like what's your food going to look like, and planning that all like holistically all at the same time. So that was awesome. I wanted to share a couple things because I know I get this question often. Is I'll use the word batching, and some teachers totally know what it is, and then other people don't. So for you, what do you think of when you think of batching?
Good question. Yeah. So it's really just double or tripling a recipe, making more than you normally would, making take whatever it says the recipe makes, double it. But of course, that requires some extra planning because you got to get it on the grocery list. You got to get it in the house. But that way, it's kind of the idea of cook once, eat 2 or 3 times or more. But also you get to cook once and do dishes once. So
Yes.
that's another time saver that people don't always realize. If you can cook more at once, if you're fine with leftovers, this is such a good strategy.
Totally, because and that's the thing, I teach batching too, but and when we think about our productivity and when we think about planning, so in the classroom it might look like basically batching is doing like tasks together. So like Rachel said, if we are batching our food, we're putting multiple like meals together, and so we have less cleanup, less prep, less planning, because we're like when you think about making cookies, for example, if you were going to make 2 batches, it's going to be much easier to batch them together than it is to like take out all the ingredients, make the cookies, bake them, clean up, and then take them all out again. But that's what we do in teaching. Like, that's what we do. Like, when you think about how many times you walked to the photocopier this week. So if you can batch your tasks at school and do more like tasks together, that can help you save time. And so it's the same with our food then, is how we can batch the food that we're eating so that we can eat well while having less prep time for
Yeah.
it.
I mean, a lot of people really just dislike the daily thought that it requires to bring food, make sure it's like, what are we having? It's that like you get to 3 p.m. Wednesday night and you're like, oh crap, what are we having? Okay, let's just go grab something. And so really this is part of that assessment to like really just see where the gaps are for you. And if a big part of it is just never feeling prepared, again, lean into how much stress that causes you and how it could feel different if you took 15 minutes once a week to just think through that. Um, but as you're doing this, you also have to make sure that you're tapping into what is and is not realistic. Because if you're like me and a lot of my clients, you'll come like, okay, I'm going to meal plan. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get everything sketched out and like you have to make sure that you are being flexible, leaving spaces open in there for eating up leftovers for those unexpected, twists and turns in the schedule or things that come up. Those fire drills. I like that. I like that
Mhm.
phrase. And also you can use this time to really go, okay, what am I missing from my food? Is it that I'm just in a food rut, is what I call it? Am I eating the
Mhm.
same dang thing and I'm just tired of it? Or are you missing like fresh, bright tastes? This is something that I commonly will like pick up on for myself in the middle of the winter. I'm like, I just want some pesto. Give me some basil. Give me something bright. And that can really sort of help your taste buds go, oh yeah, this food can be fun and it doesn't have to feel hard. um just, you kind of see what's missing. Is it that you're like, I want it just doesn't feel easy, but why? You have to go one layer deeper and maybe even two.
Yeah,
Make sure
totally.
it's
Like
realistic.
I talk about identify the problem because oftentimes we're looking at the symptom of the problem, but once you can actually identify what the true problem is, it's easier to solve it. And
Hmm.
I love the other thing about what you said about like getting clear on how something's making you feel, because so that could even be a first step for you if you're listening, is to even like start noticing how you feel after you eat something and if you feel better or worse, because like giving you that motivation later to remember how you want to feel and how you want to show up. And again, this is coming back to like, yes, we're helping our students, but it's okay to take a moment for you to think about this too, because you're going to show up for your students better when you've actually intentionally thought about, okay, I would like to show up this way. I know this food makes me feel better. So I'm going to take the time now. Because I think a lot of it is just, we don't even, I mean, we don't notice how our food, and I mean, I'm speaking from experience. I have had enough health coach friends now who have gotten me into protein. I'm like, how did I live so long without eating enough protein? So, like, just even the awareness of how food is making us feel is huge.
Absolutely. And that goes back to like a lot of this has been kind of like theory and, kind of big picture stuff, but like a really tangible thing you can do is think about, most of the time people don't feel good when they're not putting balanced meals together. So what the
Mm-hmm.
heck does that mean? The way that I teach this is I call it PFVC, protein, fat, veggie, carb. If you can get those four pieces in most of your meals, or at least two of them, you are going to feel way better. You are going to have way more sustained energy. You aren't going to have those crashes. You're going to be able to think better because you're fueling your brain. You're fueling your body. You're not going to have the blood sugar swings. This goes back to the hormones and kind of metabolic piece of this. And so, again, it might take backing it up a little bit, making sure that you have these things in your kitchen, making sure that you have, maybe there's a theme night. Maybe like Monday night's always a sheet pan meal or instant pot or slow cooker or something. So that you take down the weekly thought patterns that you need to have and energy that has to go into it. So it just like you don't have to think about it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's got to be easy and repeatable.
Yeah, totally. And I teach this in planning called plug and play planning. So instead of, we want to, like with our food, from the sounds of it too, and the way we're planning is like we want to avoid the decision fatigue. And the more decisions we make during the day, especially as the day goes on, the less energy we have to make more and more decisions. And in as teachers, and I'm sure in most professional careers, but I know in the classroom, like we have so many decisions that we make throughout the day that we can feel exhausted by the end and not want to make any more decisions. So I love what you're saying. Like I'll teach plug and play planning, which is the idea of like, don't start from scratch every day.
Mhm.
Have a routine that you start at the beginning of the day or the beginning of your lesson. At the end, what's the kind of rhythm that you have for your week or your day? And the same sounds like that's what you do as what I
Mhm.
do as well for your
So
meal
much
planning.
overlap.
Yeah, is having like themes rather than deciding like I used to literally look like when I didn't know how to meal plan, because I make a lot of parallels between meal planning and planning for students, is I would literally be like, I want to plan out my week, and I would be like, let's look on the infinity that is Pinterest for all the recipes that are possible. And like if you look up chicken on Pinterest, like there's like it's like an insane amount of recipes that you have to
Mhm.
choose from. But if you have like a narrower
Yeah.
category, it's going to be so much easier to plan your meals like sheet
Yes.
pan,
And this is why people give up meal planning because they think it has to be this grand,
which it
you
used to
know,
be for me.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
and you know what? I don't do that personally. And I live in this world every single day.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of bandwidth. And great, if you love that, if that's your jam, if you really like to button that up and feel completely planned out and stuff, great. That's absolutely going to lower your stress. But it really does not have to look like that.
Yeah. It can be so much simpler. Totally.
Mhm.
I'd love to know what can we do for teachers? Because a lot of the teachers I work with, or and this might be you, have either a really long commute or they have extracurriculars after school that they need to run, or they're just staying late after school to plan, or they have to go pick up their kids from daycare. And so they're long, like they're either spending a lot of time in the car or they're spending a lot of time outside of school in the classroom. So I'd love to know, like, what can we do if we have a long commute or a lot of demands on our time after school? What can we do around our food?
Yeah, super, super big common problem for so many women and adults. And really the first thing that I would recommend doing is kind of thinking through, we kind of like kind of you just were saying this with the plug and play. I just call it templating out your like have two or three breakfasts to rotate through.
Mhm,
And if one of those is maybe a make ahead like a frittata or something, you can certainly do that. And then template out your lunches. Is it going to be leftovers? Like loosely call it a lunch, I guess you could
mhm,
say, whenever you can scarf it down. Leftovers, or maybe you have like an alternate sandwichy, wrappy kind of something that you want to bring, when you get sick of leftovers. Or dinners, maybe it's like just have three recipes tops that you're going to cook, and then the rest of it's really easy, like sheet pan, or throw together, like open a can of tuna and have like some, throw a potato in the microwave, like keep it super simple. So that's the first thing, is like getting really easy thoughts around like what and where and when, the template. But then you have to fill in the template, right? So a lot of people do the smoothie thing. Here you just need to make sure that it's not turning into a total sugar bomb, and making sure that it's balanced meal, getting the protein in there for sure, making sure that if you're somebody who is starving by 10 a.m. and you had this smoothie at, 7, it's not enough. You need to eat more, especially if you can't eat until 1 o'clock. Like that's
mhm,
skipping meals is so common with my teachers, and it really doesn't do you any favors biologically. So if we have to bolster that breakfast, then let's do it. So just either adding a little bit more fat, a little bit more protein, making it a little bit bigger, not necessarily adding more liquid, because that tends to fill you up without the stuff that's going to hold you over, right?
mhm.
So maybe if you're doing okay with dairy and you tolerate it, making sure that you have a lot of Greek yogurt in there. That's a huge protein hit. Um, so that something like that. But also a lot of my clients who are teachers and on the run, they will do like a chia pudding. You kind of make that ahead and just let it sit up in the fridge. That chia is full of fiber, and that's really something that's going to hold you over, and it's great for the gut. Fiber is like the unsung hero. It's Nobody thinks it's sexy except for me, but I love talking about fiber. But fiber and protein and fat are the things that are going to hold you over.
Mhm.
And so we want to make sure, so the chia pudding, making sure that you're putting some protein powder in it when you're making it, or having like a little protein shake on the side of any of this, if it's not a protein dense food, is the way to go. So one of the things that I've really kind of latched onto in the last year are the OWYN protein drinks. And you can find them in it's like a pre-mixed liquid already. So you don't have to take the time to mix it up. You just want to shake it up, and you can get them with either 20, I think 25 or even 35 grams of protein in those little things. And so they taste good. They're better cold, but they taste good. They're on the go. You can keep some of that in your car, your bag, your desk, that kind of thing.
I love
Uh,
that.
yeah,
And the other
they're
thing I'm thinking too is um to have a mini fridge in your classroom. If you have your own
Mm,
classroom and you're not moving from classroom to classroom, like sometimes, I mean, if you are, you can obviously leave it in the staff room, but that's the kind of stuff like I'm thinking like with smoothies or chia puddings and stuff, like you could leave it in your, like I always had a mini fridge in my room, and so then you could easily have those things on the like ready for you. I love that.
yeah. Yeah. And then, eggs are super quick. If you have 5 minutes before you're heading out the door, throw some eggs together, making sure that you're not just eating one or two, because that is not enough protein. And so getting a solid, maybe eggs, leftover veggies from last night, if you can, and you're not opposed to that in the morning, throwing a piece of fruit with it, you're done. Like that took you 5 minutes. Um, Now, let's say your routine involves driving through Starbucks. It's okay to do that as long as you kind of know what you're doing, so you don't like cause any health issues down the road. But like something like the egg white wrappy sandwichy things
Hmm.
aren't terrible. You might actually need two of them if you're going to get enough to hold you over to lunch, though. So being aware of what's in them and what your own personal needs are, which is of course beyond the scope of this conversation. But really having that awareness so that you can throw something together. If you have like your favorite drive-through things that you're hitting on the way after school, on the way to pick up your kids or whatever, like Subway has some really good protein bowls, like going to Chipotle and making sure that you're getting probably less carb than they want to give you. And just maybe just getting a bowl and loading up on the veggies kind of thing. Like that kind of stuff is absolutely okay to do. Should not cause guilt. Just make sure that you're doing it in a way that leaves you feeling good.
I love that. It took me so long to realize that like I used to be the person who had smoothies and then would be hungry by 10. And I
Mm-hmm.
have since really changed the way I'm what I'm putting in there so they last longer. But I love the idea of, like, to kind of sum up what you said, is getting clear on the meals that you are eating, making sure that they last you longer so that you're not just trying to like, you're basically ignoring your hunger until you can possibly eat again. I think that's so key. So then you don't have to eat as often. And the other thing I would say too is to make sure in your routine that you have left time to eat. You don't have to not, you can be with a kid while you're eating, but you need to make sure that you actually carve that time into your day. Because if we're always pushing through in our students, like sometimes I remember like teachers would come in and like kids would come in for help and then nobody would eat, and that doesn't help anyone. So like bringing that as part of your routine, you're modeling it to your students that you can eat, they can eat, and you can still help them, but you need to make sure that you're fueling yourself too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where some of the grab and go stuff can come into play too, because this goes back to the flexibility in your routine in your day. If you're a planner, you sketch out the whole thing and then it goes awry. You still need to have those grab and go, like this easy grab and go list in your head and in your house. And so is that when you stop at a gas station, what are you going to grab? Is it, some of the things that I would probably have you grab, hard-boiled eggs or yogurts, beef sticks, cheese sticks, the veggie cups, the fruit cups, things like that, where you can actually put together a pretty solid meal from a gas station. Um, those protein shakes can be helpful. I do find that the liquid shakes almost always have more protein and less. Sometimes people get really bloated and gassy from protein bars. And so the
Mm-hmm.
bars can be a little bit, more dicey for people. Um, and like things like nuts and seeds, having those like fish, like, tuna packets or chicken packets in your cupboard, pairing that with some fruit and crackers, like that kind of stuff, nuts and seeds, just the grab and go list that you maybe even make a list on your phone of these things so that you don't have to get in that moment. You're like, crap, what am I going to grab here? You have it, like you've done that thinking already for yourself. You just literally look at your phone, go, okay, what am I going to have? So
So
taking
good.
out your future self will thank you.
I love that. And I'm always running out of ideas for things that I can eat fast that are going to like bring me like the protein and things like that that you're talking about. So I love the idea of having the list first.
Yeah.
Rachel, this has been so, so helpful. I mean, I've learned things as I was listening to you. So, where can we find you if we want to connect with you and learn more about what you do and chat with you on Instagram and all that fun stuff?
Yeah. So I am on Instagram at Hela Nutrition, HELA Nutrition. I do have a Facebook presence as well, same name, but I'm probably more active on Instagram. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. And I do have, if you're interested, I have an easy meals guide that sort of helps you put some of the things that we've talked about today into practice. You could print it out, throw it on your fridge. Just DM me at Hela Nutrition. If you want to just DM me the word easy meals, I will know what you're looking for. And so I can send you the link to that. But it's not necessarily recipes, because you don't need more recipes. You need to know the framework for how to throw it together quickly. Like that's really probably the best way to approach it.
I love that. Oh, that's fantastic. Yes. So definitely connect with Rachel and send her that quick DM so you can get that free guide. And we will link up your Instagram handle and everything in the show notes too, so that teachers listening can connect with you. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Rachel.
Super fun. Thanks, Lauren.